I'm not gonna do what you all think I'm gonna do, which is just flip out. Well, let me just say, as I ease out of the office, that there is such a thing as manners.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and there's been a lot of upheaval, a lot of change in the industry, and right in the middle of last week's ComicsPRO convention, Dan Didio got fired. We know that Bob Iger is out at Marvel Comics, and would you know it? But who was in the middle of all this at ComicsPRO is my good friend from Comics by Perch. What's up, Perch?
Not too much. Comic world continues to evolve and change in interesting ways, but thanks for having me on to talk about this today.
Yeah, so I'm very interested. I read the keynote speech that addressed a lot of the issues, but there was a lot more percolating at ComicsPRO, and I know that you were there and you were able to talk to the other retailers, maybe some of the industry pros and whatnot. Of course, the big news was Didio's departure from DC Comics. What was the buzz at ComicsPRO while you were there?
So it was kind of a tale of 2 days. So Saturday, I wasn't planning to go initially, and Saturday morning, just the news had broke Friday and about Didio's departure, and some people were calling up saying, "Are you here? We got to talk. Let's drink, whatever it happens to be." Kind of almost as a life preserver, if you will. So it's a quick drive down for me. Went down Saturday, and the mood Saturday was definitely one of shock, I would say. The people who were there representing DC, and there wasn't a ton. DC didn't have a massive presence, but people there were surprised. It had clearly caught people off guard. The timing of the announcement was definitely sending ripples through all of the kind of the auxiliary partners and people who work with DC. There was a lot of uncertainty, and I would say a lot of fear. There was definitely some depression in the air. Didio was not the person everybody loved in the industry. He was not as like hated as a Jim Shooter was back in the day, but he was a hard boss in a sense, known for being at least very firm in his opinions, but also somebody that did have the back of you. If you made a mistake, he would have your back by and large. So Saturday was very just kind of shocked. What's going to happen next? The rumors are starting to spill out. People are saying, "Oh, is this the sign of greater cuts to come from AT&T? What's going to happen?" By the next day, by Sunday, it was almost like the curtains were opened and light had started to come in. Kind of all around, people had moved to problem-solving mode of, okay, this gives us the opportunity to do some things. And talking to people both at ComicsPRO and also people who weren't there but were communicating through DM or wherever else, there was a big atmosphere of, hey, there was a couple rough edges with 5G and how metal was going to land and certain aspects of how this thing was all going to come together. We're going to use this as an opportunity to smooth those things out, make a more cohesive story, and we can do this. So there's a feeling of optimism started to emerge on Sunday. So from the publisher side, it really did seem to transition through ComicsPRO as people absorbed, digested, and then moved on with the news.
Very interesting. You mentioned DC 5G. That was on the tip of everyone's tongue, when we heard about Didio's departure. Is 5G, canceled? We've heard these odd rumors that, DC is going to just dissolve and AT&T is going to sell off the assets, if 5G doesn't hit. What's the latest news on 5G? Is it still moving forward? Is it going to be the end of DC Comics?
It's absolutely still moving forward. It won't be the end of DC Comics. It's too much hype and speculation. I think a lot of it is just, a couple people got credited. Ethan Van Sciver one were saying, this could be it. In context, and not to defend that comment, I think these things are said kind of casually in live streams of like, well, if this doesn't hit, there will be trouble. And then people in articles take it and run with it and amplify, and then it builds and builds on itself. The reality is this, 5G is still coming out. A lot of 5G is already written. There are big parts of 5G that was confirmed from multiple people at the show that are going to be rewritten or changed around a little bit so it lands better. But what you and I have been saying about 5G from pretty much the beginning of what this event and this moment is going to look like continues to be the story. I unfortunately, I'm not a huge retailer, so I was not invited into the secret room where parts of 5G were being shown to the big guys, and we'll get to why that created a different problem in a minute. But the general response coming out of that room was, "Hey, this isn't bad. Hey, this feels a lot like Age of Apocalypse." That kept coming up over and over and over again, which is what you and I have been saying as well. And there's opportunities here to maybe shuffle some things around, but it's not going to be the line-wide change. it is going to be a chance to kind of reset a little bit and paint a potential future, and what works works. That was what the standard comment coming out of everybody's mind. Now, perhaps, there was a conspiracy there where everybody was told to say the exact same thing, and the talking points were just firmly written for people, and they were towing the line. But I don't think so. There was generally a sense of, this is a storyline like any other storyline. Marvel's doing how many events in 2020? At least 5. So, why is this getting, this is a big event for us. We want some hype on it, but it should not be getting this all or nothing, company closes if it doesn't land kind of response. That's silly. And definitely the commitments that were being made to retailers and through the channel at ComicsPRO was indicative of a DC that's looking to 2021 and 2022 and beyond.
It's exactly what I figured, but it's good to have that confirmation in that you're at ComicsPRO. Didio's firing wasn't the only big news to kind of come out there. The keynote speaker, Nick Barrucci, I believe he's the CEO of Dynamite Entertainment.
Yes, that's right. And has a long history. People should look into this guy. I mean, he was part of Dynamic Forces, certainly had that relationship with Marvel. He has some scars. So his speech, he's a very interesting guy, and he always has very interesting, good things to say.
Yes, he did. Like I said, I did read the keynote speech, and there's a couple of things that we definitely need to talk about coming out of that. The first being, he openly addressed cancel culture and the negative effects that it's having on the industry, and he didn't really pick a side. He said all cancel culture is bad, whether a ComicsPRO trying to get a YouTube channel canceled out, if you're a retailer trying to get a comic story or line canceled out. He said we'll never have the next big thing if we aren't accepting of change and trying to do new things in the industry. What did you think about his comments on cancel culture?
I loved it. I think he was absolutely on point, and I'm hoping we hear more of this. I think some of these people coming out and saying this stuff at a keynote, and Dynamite's a small publisher, but Nick is a big guy in the industry. He's a very well-known guy with a lot of history. So I think that these statements said out loud is what a lot of us have been hoping for, because to your point, he very specifically did not say, hey, those people on Twitter need to stop canceling Marvel books. He said pros need to stop attacking YouTube channels that just bring negativity to the business. He said, fans need to stop their campaigns. And he was clear that it was not just, he used a reference of The Boys and how there was a group on Twitter and a group of retailers who said, well, we're not going to carry any of your titles if you publish The Boys. This was, he didn't say in the speech, but he's definitely referring to kind of the social justice, we're going to cancel you attitude there. And he uses it in the same hand as the same cancel culture that we've seen around, this creator said something anti-political we don't like, let's cancel that person's comic. So his comments were very well said. He put it all into one bucket, which I think is appropriate. And nobody is above anybody else. You call out the behavior, you don't call out groups. And so I know some people bristle at times because they don't like to be lumped into the group, but the behavior is what's wrong here. It's not saying, a Comicsgate is bad, or this pro is bad, or this person is bad. It's saying bad behavior is bad behavior, whoever you are. And I think that was well said. Great. The industry needs to hear more of that.
I completely agree with you. There will be a link to that keynote address in the video description if you want to check it out for yourself, because there's a lot of information in there. The other big thing that he addressed, and I don't even think it's the elephant in the room anymore. It's just it's an issue that needs to be tackled. There are too many comic books being produced at the moment. There's far too much signal to noise right now. The good books that are waiting to be discovered that really should be rising to the top are being drowned out by a sea of mediocrity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that he addresses head on. A lot of people have lately, and at this point, I think every publisher, with the exception of one big one, has said there's too many comics on the stands. And I think the comments are getting more and more pointed, especially on Sunday when you had the forums and the roundtables with some of the retailers. People are saying, okay, we all agree here. So when is Marvel going to get with the page as well? Because there are too many books, they're not being marketed, and it's this kind of pump and dump strategy that's killing retailers, killing interest. But worst, it's terrible for the fans, because the fans, to your point, are getting drowned out. They're missing good books, and it's not helping anyone. Marvel is taking a loss on some of the smaller books, but they continue to churn them out anyway. The events that we have coming out from Marvel was a big topic of discussion throughout the Sunday. And it was, in 2020, Marvel continues to just dump more and more and more events out with tie-ins and small issues that everyone knows will sell, sub 10K, probably sub 5K, but it's just creating an extra 10 or 20 books. It wasn't a ComicsPRO, but the Sword of X event that was announced. I mean, it's a crossover. Some of that will be in the normal book, but 15 issues. That's a lot. In addition to all the other things you have going on, it's just too much. So it was great for Nick to kind of bring this out. I think the industry is starting to take a stand. One of the things that was interesting was, I mentioned before, retailers are typically a little salty at these events, and usually in the realm of variant covers and some of the confusing pricing schemes. Gabriel usually takes it pretty hard from retailers, but this time the retailers were a little bit more, I would say, clinical about it and saying, look, we're just not going to order these books. We're not going to order the long tail of your library because you are drowning us. And so I don't care if you are Dynamite or Boom or Marvel. It's nice that you have this event, but we are not going to order your 8 or 9 books that we know are limited series that are just clogging up the shelves with this or that. So we're going to stop. And for the first time, you start to hear similar rumblings from people like Midtown and Mile High saying, yeah, this is not good for us either. You're creating too much churn. You're hurting our business. That is good pressure. And I'm hopeful that in 2020, the dam breaks and we finally get back to a more reasonable line.
That is wonderful news. Just as a point of example, a few weeks back, I was talking to you about a book called The Kill Lock.
Yep.
You're a retailer, and you didn't even realize the book had come out because you're just inundated with new comic books. I was like, you got to read this. This is quality. And it hasn't been marketed. No one even knows that there's this amazing science fiction, comic book out from IDW.
You're right. And it is embarrassing. I mean, for me, it's embarrassing. By the way, it's a great book. Issue 3 was just out. It is a great book. You've got to get onto it, but it's a problem that the retailers are bulk ordering or, putting numbers down kind of to a line. They're not able to even digest what's coming in, and the previews catalog and solicitations are terrible in terms of marketing what they are. So it is just flooding in. And I think for the first time in a good 20 years, there are books coming out that I'm finding out about at the same time as customers. We're ordering them. A shop near me is ordering books just based off of IDW will order at least 5 of everything, so we have it on the shelf. But they're not paying attention to what's coming in, and that's terrible. Retailers have to be knowledgeable about what they're selling, and with this many comics, just the volume no longer works. You're seeing big companies from the big individuals from the big companies. Didio, CB Cebulski has said at different times, like, hey, I need to catch up on the books that we're publishing. That's not good either. I mean, the publishers are not even keeping up with their own line. So it's got to change. But there was a lot of topics, a lot of comments at ComicsPRO about this. And again, it felt like on Sunday people are moving to solutions. It wasn't just kind of anger at too many titles. It was all right, we're just not going to order these, and there's just got to be some change. We're no longer going to talk about if this is a problem anymore. We're going to say it is a problem, and if the publisher is not going to control themselves, we're going to just turn the pipeline off.
Speaking of maybe the big two in retailers, local comic shops, was there anything else that proved to be maybe an increasing disconnect between the two entities that it seems like need to be addressed, while you were at ComicsPRO?
Yeah, it was, and that was a topic of conversation. Is the shops and the retailers are saying, look, we feel furthest away from Marvel than we've ever felt. And keep in mind, with a grain of salt, retailers often say, you're not doing enough for us. We need to hear more from you. And they aim those targets primarily at the big two. Some of that was definitely based on Didio, who did try, I think, to maintain a relationship with retailers. He was somebody who did reach out more. But it was a big topic of conversation of the retailers are saying, look, there's not good connection. You're not giving us good marketing. You're not giving us good information. And sometimes you don't show up at these events. And when you do, you bring maybe, you con a couple artists to come in here and or writers, and they'll sit with us for a while. And that's nice. We like to hear from them, but that they don't know anything about the publisher's strategy. So when are you going to tell us what's going on? There was definitely a sense from DC that we're on the cusp of seeing a pretty big pivot to figuring out how to work with retailers more, definitely pruning their line and doing some of these positive changes. So again, people left with a bit of an optimism of where DC would go, that it wouldn't fall. but there's definitely I don't want to say pessimism, just a look, we're over being angry. We now just require a change. And a lot of those comments being aimed at Marvel, if they have to do a better job, standing up David Gabriel to take a bunch of arrows, for an hour, 2 or 3 times a year is just not cutting it. And so there has to be some other ways that people reach out to retailers and, the publishers. So some of the creators were joining with the retailers to say, look, we need information from the publisher level. We love talking to creators. It's nice, but it's not their job to go out and try and inform the retailers what the publishing strategy of the company is. But that's increasingly what you've been doing. You require your creators to go on Twitter and pimp your books. That's nice. They should be doing that for their own careers anyway, but that's not a publishing strategy. Where's the marketing department? Where's the publishers really reaching out? So definitely there's a feeling of disconnect that's increased between the big 2 publishers.
You mentioned this earlier. Did it maybe cause some retailers to maybe think this is disingenuous when DC went and took all the big retailers, brought them into a secret room and showed them all the goodies that are coming up? So maybe they'll be prepared, or maybe some of the smaller shops like yourself or Pele were kind of left out in the dark.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it speaks to, it's not a secret. Everybody knows that the big retailers are the ones that are going to get the attention. They have for years. They have their own reps and they'll do signings, they'll do special things for them. They have the money. And frankly, if you're running a business, you go where the money is. There's nothing necessarily horrible about that. But what is it's become more transparent that the limited amount of marketing effort that gets pumped out is focused almost entirely at the big guys. So there was a definite sense of irritation at the big guys getting a secret showing and getting maybe a little bit more information, where arguably they can weather the storm of over ordering or under ordering much more than a small group can. And so the small customers, the small retailers who were kind of pushing back a little bit, saying, look, we're going to do smaller orders. We have diversified our line. I heard over and over and over retailers, including at the big summit, at the roundtables, discussing what else are you carrying besides comics? Oh, you have a supplier who's doing this. Hey, can I have that? You're seeing a lot of coordination between retailers of sewing up different distributors, different ways to get product that are not comics to basically stabilize their store. And hand in hand with that is, yeah, the big guys are off talking to DC about these comics. Well, if they're going to put their attention there for the comics, then the smaller guys are just going to continue to look for other ways to make their money without them. And that is that's growing friction. It's not new, but definitely was on display at ComicsPRO. So I had a number of comments after ComicsPRO throughout the week of people from DC in particular saying, "Hey, hang in there." I said I heard from 2 different writers, 3 different artists, 3 editors at DC who all had a similar story of, we're going through 5G, we're going to clean parts of it up, we are going to make more of an effort to market to you. Your comments are loud and clear, because I had done a video on a bit of this. And we are going to take this as an opportunity to change. Again, maybe they're all coordinated, they're all being sent the same talking points, but it was remarkable to me how they all had the same general story of, we recognize some problems and we want to fix it. This last week has left me with a lot more optimism for DC than I had 2 weeks ago.
That is very good news, and I'm sure the viewers are very happy with that. There's been a lot of consternation about what the future of DC and 5G is, but I can't wait to maybe get some more details, and maybe we'll talk about that in the future. I know one of the big things that we talk about here on the channel, you and I talk about with Pele, is new distribution methods, new ways of getting comic books out there into the hands of new readers, so they can come into the comic shops and discover all these wonderful books, all these wonderful creators, these wonderful characters waiting to be discovered. Were there any new ideas for selling comics presented or maybe talked about at ComicsPRO?
There were, and there's a couple really fascinating ones, and I'm kicking myself that I'm not prepared, but there were 2 companies that were showcasing basically a vending machine, a kiosk. And what was interesting about that was the sell was, hey, local comic shop, buy this vending machine. It's got a delivery mechanism. You put money into it and the comic drops out like soda, but it's it's got a little plastic sleeve, so it's not going to be damaged when it does this. The other one had a better delivery system still. But basically, buy one of these vending machines, stock it up with some comics, and basically give yourself a second location that sort of feels like the newsstand again, that you maybe go to a grocery store and buy some floor space to put this vending machine in. That was interesting. These kind of ideas are great. Seeing this innovation of that. There was another company that was promoting a mailer system where it was going to be easier for a comic shop to receive the comics, quickly put them in a mail, and service overseas customers or people like that with some prepaid shipping, just basically taking a lot of logistics away from the comic shop, which is welcome news. That vending machine idea, though, as crazy as it sounds, and right now I'm sure people are thinking, they're picturing the soda vending machine plan where the can drops.
I'm picturing Redbox.
Redbox, exactly. Picture Redbox. That is genius in a way, because it does allow a comic shop to at least try some other areas to get some exposure for comics. And I think it works, especially if it is
a little card in there in the comic book so they know where to go to get the next issue.
Exactly. You could put the store brand on the shop, on the vending machine as well. But if you think about a world where you've got a grocery store and you've got a Redbox sitting right next to a comics vending machine, you're getting your Deadpool movie or whatever, you're buying Joker, and then right next to it you've got a comic of the Joker. That is smart cross selling. Put that in a movie theater. And brick and mortar shops, bigger shops, the box shops, are actually looking for more of these pop up pieces in their store. It's much cheaper. 10 years ago, that floor space to put a vending machine in was actually quite expensive. Today, it's much cheaper than it used to be. So it's actually reasonable for a comic shop to do that. And I mean, you can even picture a comic shop having a very small floor space, kind of home base, buying 5 or 6 of these things and kind of distributing them around the city, and suddenly they've got a much bigger footprint. That's interesting. So there's some interesting ideas like that. It gave me a lot of, again, optimism. I love to see the innovation. And I love it that people are trying to figure out new ways to distribute.
Okay, I think we only have one more subject. We talked about a little bit, in our recent collaboration where we talked about, and what I thought were the 6 most, interesting developments to monitor in 2020. It's new indie publishers changing, distribution methods, maybe changing their marketing methods. What was basically the general feeling? I know we talked about Bad Idea a little bit.
We did, and people should check out that video. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, and there's no like magic bullet idea, but what you are seeing from TKO and Boom and Valiant was hinting that they were going to announce something soon. There's a bunch of little ideas that are being tried around how comics could get distributed, and I think underlying this, and this is my crazy theory, underlying this is a belief, certainly by some of the small publishers, that either Diamond is going to go away or really start to clamp down on the smaller guys. So they need to start building their life preserver now. They need to start planning for a future where Diamond goes away. So what can they do for the comic shop to either make distribution happen easier, do more things direct? I think everybody's kind of searching for that bullet, but you're seeing a lot more traction of people really starting to try some new ideas. So there's a lot of just conversation, a lot of polling from the smaller groups to the retailers saying, look, if we gave you this order form, if we made a subscription website for you, would you go and order direct? Like, could you do this? Now, they all have Diamond deals, so they're doing this all very cautiously. Nobody's going to disrupt any of that. But there is a lot of experimentation that's being floated of how retailers can get comics in cleaner ways. And that's also good news that people are thinking on that. Of course, 2 big notable exceptions to that conversation, or 3 really, if you count Image. They're not talking about this at all. So where they go is another story. But
all very interesting. I want to say thank you, Perch, for coming on and sharing this information with the viewers. It sounded like, you arrived on a down note, very somber, but, as the weekend progressed, it sounds like things got more hopeful. And once that conversation started going between you and maybe some of the retailers, the publishing representatives, some of the creators, that maybe a lot more optimism came out of that experience than you definitely expected. Definitely so. It did. It was a journey through that weekend, but it was interesting to watch people kind of move to problem solving mode. That was very positive. It was interesting, I would say, that this is in Portland, and there was a very notable contingent of people who were not there, who did not show their faces. And that was unusual. A lot of people flew into the event, a lot of logistical folks, but a lot of creators that I thought were supposed to be there were kind of nowhere to be found. That was curious, but it is what it is. I think that any names you want to drop? No. I mean, okay. Windus and all of his folks. I mean, the Portland Mafia skipped. The Portland Mafia people were mysteriously absent. Now it was curious. There were people there, but it was not anyway.
I think the key is on Saturday. I'm sure Friday night as well. The bars were doing a raving business in the area, and definitely a lot of alcohol was consumed. But people did seem to sober up and get to solutions on Sunday.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. It sounds very exciting, and I can't wait to maybe talk about some of this stuff again in the future when we have some more details or maybe some new information comes out. Thanks a lot for joining me today, Perch. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.